From the perspective of many classical traditions, healing is the first stage. Healing is simply the act of becoming whole and coherent enough to be able to do the more advanced work, to transform oneself permanently. And this has to do with creating new structures in the human subtle body. The structures in the human subtle body are the only thing we will take with us through the gate of death. They're the only things that permanently become part of us. There's a concept that I refer to as the number prism, that to understand any phenomena, what we do in a modern scientific approach is we divide it into its component parts. And so what you'll find in India, for example, to understand healing vibrations, they tend to divide them into 3 different parts. And they'll talk about the 3 gunas. They'll talk about vata and pitta and kapha. These are 3-fold division. In the West, there'd often be a 4-fold division of the 4 elements. In China, a 5-fold division of the 5 elements. But there's an interesting statement by the great Rosicrucian teacher Rudolf Steiner, where he said to fully understand any system in the world and to be able to differentiate out every one of its core aspects requires at minimum a 12-fold division. This is a classical teaching from great spiritual and healing traditions in the world. That's why there are 12 disciples around the Christ, why there are 12 imams in Shia Islam, while there are a division of the stars into 12 signs of the zodiac around the sun. It's 12 around the one. For those of you that know sacred geometry, and you look at how a cube is structured, a cube is the form that gives rise to matter. The cube has 12 lines that define the cube. If you look at a sphere, you can fit exactly 12 spheres around a central sphere. Again, 12 around the one. To be able to understand all these different world systems and put them into a common unified system, I was looking for a method to be able to differentiate out the 12 core aspects within vital energy. To lead to the discussion directly of this, I want to give a frame of reference of what we have done to create modern technology, because sometimes we take for granted that we live in an age of technological miracles. We just are so exposed to it every day we don't think about it anymore. But the world has been completely transformed in the last 100 years. Through discoveries that have taken place over the last 150 years. Now, what I'm referring to here is that to have a science, you need to be able to differentiate any aspect of things into its component parts. You need to have a spectrum, what we would call spectrum analysis. So one of the first breakthroughs that we had was the identification of every type of matter that exists in the physical world. In the ancient world, you never had that. So we live in a material world, but we didn't know what all the different pieces of matter were until the latter part of the 1800s with the identification of the periodic table of elements. What we call the periodic table of elements is really the identification of the complete spectrum of matter itself. Now we can be fully conscious of everything that makes up the physical world. That opened up everything in material science for all of our modern technology. So what you find in many classical traditions is that they will talk about different levels of creation. So there's the physical level, there's the etheric life energy level, that in China would be called qi, or in Japan would be called ki, or in India would be called prana. Greeks would call it the ether. So this etheric vital force energy is above that of the physical. Then there are consciousness levels beginning with what we call in the West the astral level.